Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Robert Sorensen. I'm the Director of Sports and Wellness for Mediterra. I've been here for about 8 months now. What's cool is this is the second in a series of presentations focusing on longevity or just some lifestyle adjustments to improve longevity. And we have a much better turnout than last month, which tells me two things. People are hungry for information, and hopefully that the first presentation went so well that you grabbed a friend to bring with you this time around. It's a series that will continue on through the remainder of the season. So you'll see another one in March, and then you'll see another one in April. But again, today we are focusing on fasting. Fasting, again, as more of a lifestyle change to support longevity. The way that I like to present is for things to be a little bit interactive. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to pop a hand up. If it's something that's going to be tackled in a slide later down the road, I'll let you know that. If it's a question that's good to answer at the time, we'll take care of it. So why are we here? Why are we in this room? Hopefully because you want to learn a little bit about how to live longer and you want to learn how to live better. For those of you who are at the sleep lecture last month, this chart should look very similar. It's a quality of life on one axis and it's your age on the opposite axis. Traditional trajectory is we're living and we experiencing kind of that slow, steady decline, ultimately leading to death. What we know now about lifestyle factors and how to improve them, we're trying to push in the direction of what's considered squaring the curve. So you're living at a very, very high capacity, and that at a certain point in time, we have a very quick decline. So things like proper sleep, things like fasting can help support and promote living in that direction. So what I do with these subjects is I take the information, I read through the literature, I dig through the scientific articles, I try to synthesize it, making it more digestible or understandable, taking out some of those scientific terms, and bring it back to you in more easily understandable forms. I'll also use my experience and share that when appropriate. Fasting is something that I've done quite a bit of. And then ultimately we want some takeaways, so I'll share some easy applications that you can do on your own. When we talk about easy application, what I recommend with these, try to take maybe 2-3 things that can be applied in your own personal life and focus on executing on those. If we try to take on everything, we usually set ourselves up for failure. So start small and add layers over time. So when we talk about longevity, it's not about increasing how long we live, it's about increasing the quality of life or increasing our health span. It's about delaying the onset of disease, not completely eliminating the onset of disease, because they are going to settle in. It's just a matter of when, where, and what type. And ideally, it's about living longer with the absence of disease. So we learn a lot from those who live to be centenarians or age 100 or greater. They're not living to age 100 or greater because they have some genetic predisposition to support that. It's primarily because they've been able to compress their morbidity by delaying the onset of disease. When we look at those aged 100 or older, most of them are going to develop the same diseases as everyone else. They're going to experience cancer, they're going to have stroke, they're going to have hypertension, they're going to have osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, all of these things. What they tend to do is to start experiencing those signs and symptoms just much, much later in life. And one of the tools that can help contribute to this compression of morbidity or that delaying of first onset of signs and symptoms is fasting. So this is a blown up picture. This is a Kaplan-Meier survival, disease-free survival graph. Later onset always leads to better outcomes. And it's very important to note that genetically, your outcomes are genetically only about 20 to 30% related to lifespan or health outcomes or overall health. So think about it. Do we want to target 70 to 80% of what's within our control, or do we want to get caught up on 20 to 30% of what's within our control? Often we end up blaming, oh, genetics has me looking this way. I have genetic predisposition for this. My parents had this, so I'm inevitably going to have that. That's still only accounting for 20 to 30%. That other 70 to 80% is entirely dedicated to lifestyle and environment, things that we can control more or less every single day of the week. So this graph is a quick run through. This shows the first onset of hypertension in this case. So we see that somebody who had the first onset of hypertension very, very early, they had that slow, steady decline. Somebody who had the first onset of hypertension later in life still experiences that slow and steady decline. The difference is what happened between here and here to push that first onset of hypertension. That's what we need to focus in on, is how do we push the presence of disease? And again, that's predominantly by lifestyle and by environment. Once you understand a little bit more about fasting, you'll understand how that practice can contribute to that. So the key with this is something called autophagy. Autophagy is a cellular process. At a certain point, it's happening within all of us. It might be present a little bit right now, but it might be present a lot of it. All of that's really predicated by the foods you eat, when you eat it, quantities, timing, things of that extent. We'll explain autophagy, and then we'll really get into how that contributes to some of our fasting considerations. What it means is truly self-eat. We have the word auto, self, and we have the word phagy, eat. Eat yourself. It is the body's mechanism of breaking down old cells so that they can be recycled and repurposed for other use. Really easy way to think about this as a Lego set. We were all kids, we have children, we have grandkids. We've seen the blocks, we've seen them assembled, we've seen them disassembled. What starts as a castle, we play with the castle, then we break it down, the castle becomes a race car. The race car becomes an airplane becomes a helicopter. This is very similar the way our body handles our cells. As our cells get used, we have a mechanism called autophagy that seeks out these used cells. It breaks them down, sorts them. Again, this is a very easy way of understanding it. And then our body figures out how it's going to repurpose those cellular components. And that system is autophagy. And autophagy isn't just one word, it's actually an umbrella term of 4 different subcomponents. So autophagy is comprised of 1, lipophagy, which is the usage of stored fat for energy. We all like to use our fat for energy. We don't want to turn to carbohydrate or fat all the time, or carbohydrate or protein all the time. We would much like to use something that we all want less of. Agrophagy, which essentially is the cleaning out of cellular junk, those used components in our castle, or those used components in our airplane, our race car, whatever happens to be our Lego analogy. We have mitophagy, which is the recycling of mitochondria. Mitochondria, if you remember, that's our powerhouse of the cell. We like mitochondria, especially if we're active people. The more of them that we have, or the higher they're able to operate. Again, all good things. So mitophagy, that subcomponent, seeks out those used mitochondrial cells, breaks them down so that we can get new powerhouses in play to support our activity. And then the fourth and final is xenophagy, which is the elimination of bacteria. So all 4 of these things are part of that umbrella cellular process of autophagy. If we have autophagy as our cellular process and it is disrupted, that's when bad things happen. Negative health outcomes. Naturally, it declines with age. Like most cellular processes, things are not as good in our 80s as they were in our 70s, or as good as they were in our 70s as they were in our 60s. Just because we have a slower way of operating, cells can only divide so many times. When cells stop dividing as they should, that's where cancer cells start to produce, that's where other diseases and metabolic conditions start to present themselves. When autophagy is disrupted, it increases the risk of chronic disease because we're not recycling those older diseased and used cells. And it is truly going to impact all cardiometabolic, neurological, and immune health functions. So say, for example, we talked about NK cells last month during the sleep study. The NK cell is that natural killer, that cancer-killing cell. We want those operating at a really high capacity. Fasting is something that can contribute to helping those cells work harder, work stronger. When we talk about cardiometabolic, we have an obesity epidemic in the United States. We have 40% of our population that's obese. I think 75% of our population is either overweight or obese. Fasting is something that can help not from a calorie restriction standpoint, but from a cardiometabolic standpoint. It is foundational longevity. It is the most foundational longevity mechanism as we know it, because of its support in preventing all of these things. Metabolic disease, pulmonary disease, neurodegenerative disease and aging, that's your Alzheimer's and related dementias, infectious diseases, vascular disease, and all-case cancer. So now you know the cellular process. Let's talk about how that is related to the concept of fasting. So we have something called a fed state. A fed state, that's after you eat. That purpose is to prioritize growth and storage, filling our cells back up. Then we have a fasted state, which prioritizes repair and cellular cleanup. The challenge is that our modern day eating patterns rarely allow the fasted state to occur. We're almost always in some sort of fed state because of our normal eating habit patterns of breakfast, lunch, dinner at 7, 8 a.m., noon, 6 or 7 p.m. There's not enough window of time between those meals, even when we consider an overnight fast, to allow autophagy and all those umbrella-related processes to occur. So what do we do about it? We learn how autophagy is activated by fasting, and then we learn how maybe we can incorporate it into our lifestyle. A lot of arrows. I'll walk you through it step by step. So this is exactly how autophagy happens in a snapshot. We are a person, we stop eating. At its very basic, this means we have less sugar in our body. By having less sugar in our body, we're decreasing our insulin. By having less insulin, it's promoting the presence of something called glucagon. Glucagon is what helps support the autophagy process. So this first line, sugar drop, insulin drop, glucagon up, it removes the suppression of autophagy. Think of it as that door was closed after we eat. By removing insulin, by removing food, that door is now open. We've set the stage. Autophagy can now start. Now we have to kickstart it and allow that process to begin. By removing protein, we decrease the activity of something called mTOR. mTOR, long phrase, mammalian target of rapamycin. when protein is present in the body, this mTOR process is in a continual state. It does not stop as long as the body has access to protein. So by removing protein, we stop the mTOR activation and autophagy can begin. So fasting, we remove sugar, which increases glucagon. And by fasting, we remove protein, which allows the mTOR process to stop. Those two things in combination is what allows autophagy to begin. The easier way to think of it, if that mammalian target of rapamycin is taking place, we're never going to have autophagy. We remove sugar, we remove protein, we're in good shape. And by having that constant suppression of mTOR, we're increasing our risk of neurodegenerative disease, diabetes, and cancer because we're not allowing that cellular recycling process to take place. We decrease sugar, we decrease protein, we start recycling our cells. Does that make sense? Cool. Let's use the brain as an easy...
I didn't understand that. You're saying you want to actually reduce the proteins? It's a good thing?
You do want to decrease protein. So you are unable to achieve autophagy or that cellular regeneration if there is a high presence of both carbohydrate or sugar as well as protein in the body. Now, I know where you're going with that, is we know protein is good. We want to eat more protein. We can get into the timing of protein so that we are still getting the appropriate and adequate amount. We'll get that down the road. I believe starting with the brain is a real easy case study in why we want to seek out autophagy. And let's think about Alzheimer's or related dementias. We know that Alzheimer's is really grounded in that accumulation of plaques and tangles in the brain. Autophagy is part of the cellular process that helps remove those plaques and tangles. So if we can promote a process that's going to keep our brain synapses firing the way they should for as long as possible, we're going to then be able to delay the onset or possibly delay altogether development of Alzheimer's disease or related dementias, just because we're putting our body in the state of being able to repair itself. We see a similar concept in cellular regeneration throughout the body. So one of the more interesting studies that I read through was involving mice, as most studies are. Most of my mouse studies, actually until pretty recently, were all male mice. So that really does limit the carryover and how we understand it as it relates to humans. But we do get to learn quite a bit from them in the terms of what might be possible. So scientists, they had two groups of mice. Group one, they put on a specific fasting regimen and also injected them with 3,000 times the normal amount of cancer cells. Group two, we let them eat a normal diet, expose them to that same amount of 3,000 times the amount of normal cancer cells. The mice that were fasting were allowed to do some periodic 24-hour fasts. I believe it was every other day. Normal diet, they were able to chow down when they wanted, where they wanted. After 1 week, the mice that were allowed to eat when they want, where they want, were all dead. After 1 week, the mice that were fasting periodically, they were still alive. After 8 days, they were able to bring their radiation level back to normal. And then after a month, those mice were still alive. So this isn't a case study in what would happen in a human experiment, but it really emphasizes the point that this cellular regeneration process of autophagy, which is only available in some sort of a fasted state, can certainly help with tissue regeneration. This is something in human trials has been reported or demonstrated at a lesser capacity with individuals who have undergone chemotherapy. So if you're doing chemotherapy, you come off of chemotherapy, you still have the presence of a higher level of radiation for some time. After you're released from chemotherapy, those who were on a specific fasting protocol were able to reduce their overall level of radiation at a faster rate than those who were just sent back out into the world. So again, something very new, something that we're continuing to learn more and more about. And remember, this is all just about cellular regeneration. There are tons of other benefits associated with going through some targeted fasting protocols. So let's talk about what is fasting and what is not fasting, because we all kind of use that term interchangeably. We saw the majority of hands go up when I asked who's done fasting and who's aware of there being different types of fasting, but we likely can't call out the fact that there are 6 or 7 different types. So let's break it down. Fasting is not starvation. Fasting should be purposeful. Fasting should not be something that you do the day after Thanksgiving because we ate too much the day before. There should be some intent behind it. It's not to be used as punishment, and it should not be chronic calorie deprivation. It shouldn't be, well, I'm going to fast for 24 hours because I know I'm going to have a very large meal the next day. We're missing the point of fasting. Fasting is controlled periods of low energy availability. So this is a planned process, whether you're doing some sort of time-restricted eating, whether you're doing some sort of an alternate fast or a long duration fast. This should be planned leading up to the execution, and then it should also be planned on the other side of it as you're coming out of your fast. 6 or 7 different types, depending on your interpretation. This is something that, unless you're nocturnal or if you're an evening shift worker, that all of us experience, and that's the overnight fast. Standard, by definition, dinner to breakfast, or if you're somebody who has dessert, it's then dessert until breakfast. It's when you lay your head on the pillow to when you have your first bite of food the next day. Overnight fast, very common in the Western world. It is not a long enough duration to be of any real significance. I'd like to point that out again. It is not a long enough duration to activate autophagy at any real purposeful amount. Some is taking place, but not enough to really push that health span improvement. Good question, good question. Time-restricted feeding. This is something that most people misunderstand as intermittent fasting. They're 2 different things. So time-restricted feeding, we talk about how much time is needed to allow that autophagy process to really happen at a little bit of a higher rate. We extend that overnight fast a little bit longer. 14:10 is a very common window. 16:8 is a very common window. 18:6 is another very common window. What those numbers mean is the first number is the amount of time that you are spent not eating. 14 hours fasted, 10 hours eating. 16 hours fasted, 8 hours eating. 18 hours fasted, 6 hours eating.
Breaks a fast?
Yes, okay. Yes, we will get into what breaks a fast. 16:8, recent literature is showing us that's what we should be going for. So 16 hours of fasting, 8-hour eating window. Most people can incorporate that into a relatively normal day. So say you have your breakfast at 8 a.m. We're still able to have a decently normal day, early morning snack, lunch, early afternoon snack, dinner's gonna be right on the line. 14:10, even more approachable, and it's still an improvement over just an overnight fast alone. Most of us are probably pretty close to that already. It's just being a little more cognizant of when we stop the feeding window in the evening and maybe having to push our breakfast a little bit later in the morning. The 18:6 window, that's when it starts to get a little more difficult because we've now compressed our feeding time. Some people find that they're not able to get in all of the food that they need during that 6-hour window. That's where we start making specific recommendations of higher caloric density foods, just so that you are hitting your certain calorie amount that you need every day, or your certain amount of protein amount that you need every day. And there are absolutely recommendations for that. Alternate day fasting. So this is truly a fast one day, so I think 24 hours, and then the next day you're eating a diet as you wish. So not being selective, not being restrictive, it is just a normal day in the neighborhood. So super, super low energy intake, moderate energy intake, back and forth. This is something that I have never done this personally. It just, it's not super approachable to me. It's something that might work really well for others. Intermittent fasting, again, this is often misunderstood as time-restricted eating. Intermittent fasting is kind of the gold standard if we're trying to promote autophagy. And in my opinion, again, this is probably the most long-term approachable way of fasting. And what intermittent fasting means is that we are doing a full day fast at some sort of regularity, whether that be weekly, monthly, every other month, every couple of months, just at some sort of cadence that works within your lifestyle. This is what I do. I'll do a 24-hour fast maybe once every 3 to 4 weeks. I know that it reminds me that I'm not going to starve. It reminds me that food is a privilege. It's something that we should always look forward to. It's not something that we should take for granted as always being readily available. And it also reminds me that it's not that difficult to incorporate something into my lifestyle that's going to provide support to my longevity.
Is there data out there that says if you fasted once a week as opposed to once a month, that's more beneficial?
The question was, is there data out there that supports a once a week 24-hour fast as being more beneficial than a once a month 24-hour fast? Yes. So, that again, it's going to be person specific and if that works with your lifestyle. Just because something happens to be better doesn't mean something that we're going to be able to adhere to. I know I would not be able to do that once a week. Once a month or once every 3 to 4 weeks for me, it's approachable, and I know that that is better than just doing it once a month.
Do you do it in combination with the window fasting where you...
So the question is, do we do the combination of intermittent fasting with time-restricted eating? So maybe you're doing a 16-8 every day, and then one day of the week you're doing a 24-hour fast. This is just an example. That would be encouraged. Again, if it works within your lifestyle, we know that's going to promote more autophagy. For some people, that's not going to work out. It's going to set yourself up for failure. And that's where we really need to dial in. If we can adhere to it, phenomenal.
And have studies shown that those time periods should be different for men versus women?
Have studies showed that time periods are different for men versus women? We'll get a little bit more into that. A lot of it has to do with where we are in the aging process when we compare men and women because of hormonal changes in the late 40s, early 50s, where that's something that I would keep a stronger pulse on, is how it makes you feel energy-wise. Otherwise, from what I was able to read through, it's not showing that it's better for men to do it one way or women to do it another way. Great question. Five to 2 hypercaloric fast. Similar in a sense to the conversation that we just had. 5 out of the 7 days of the week you're eating normally, so normal eating pattern as you would, and then 2 days out of the week we're eating a much more restrictive calorie intake in that maybe 400 to 600 range on non-consecutive days. So I'm going to taper way back on Mondays and Fridays, but I'm just going to eat as I wish Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we get a little bit of undulation in there. And then finally, we have the prolonged fasting, multiple day fasting. Probably makes you think of Buddhist monks up in the mountains, so they're not going to have a drop of food for 7 to 10 days. True mental journey. The longest I've made it is 4 days. That's something that I don't do very frequently at all. More again for that experience of knowing that food is a privilege. It's not something that we have to seek out at every certain cadenced window of time. A true prolonged fast, to avoid spiking the insulin whatsoever, water is cool. Coffee, as long as it's black, is cool. Tea, as long as it's not sweetened, is supported. And then bubble water or seltzer water, any sort of zero calorie seltzer, no stevia added into it. I find personally that that's what I seek out, because that carbonation helps create a little bit more feeling of satiety. That fullness feeling can really help if you're somebody who's pushing towards their first 24-hour fast, or if you're somebody who is trying to shift their feeding window into like an 18-6. Use carbonation, it's definitely your friend. Important to note that if you want a little bit of extra reset for your gut, would try to eliminate coffee during a prolonged fast, just because of the acidity and disruption that can take place. We pull coffee out, you get a little bit more support to your gut health.
That's my question.
That's your question. What about my muscle mass? Fasting does not inherently cause muscle loss. Just because you're not eating for a certain window of time, or because you're not able to have protein immediately after your workout, does not mean you're going to shift into some sort of a catabolic state where your body starts seeking out your protein or devouring your muscle mass.
Sorry to interrupt, but so you raise a good point. So if you're fasting to this level, are you actually able to work out?
Are you able to work out? And I think that yes.
Okay.
This is something that you strategize around of, okay, when are my workouts? When is going to be the best window of time for me to eat and not eat? Or am I going to do a 24-hour fast on a day that happens to be my rest and recovery day? So it's all about just planning ahead and strategy. But 100% activity is perfectly normal, whether you're doing a intermittent, time-restricted, 5 to 2, whatever type it is, type of fast. What happens actually when we're in a fasting state, it promotes the opposite. We get more release of growth hormone. Growth hormone is what helps support cellular regeneration, strength gain, muscle mass improvement. So it's a very common misnomer that if we're going through periodic fasting or long duration fasting, that our body is going to start to eat itself. Not the case.
Do you achieve that by, like even the trainers here recommend the protein all the time, and elsewhere I know they do. So are you saying that it doesn't cause that, but are you making up for that by having the same quantity of protein but in a more constrained time during a particular part of the day?
I should just invite you up here and just have you repeat that same sentence. So yeah, we're strategizing around it. We're still trying to hit our same amount of protein. We're just trying to compress it into the window of time where we're actually eating. The only caveat with that is if we are doing a 24-hour or longer fast, obviously there's going to be a longer duration of time between protein, but leading up to, and then on the other side of the fast, protein is something that you want to prioritize. So one of the very last things that you have before your fast, and one of the first things that you want to have after your fast. It's also going to be very heavily reliant on resistance training. So we talked about exercise, making sure that you are doing resistance training somewhere around your fasting window. Not quite as important until we get into those longer duration versions. So we do, as with anything medically related, want to incorporate some physical consideration. Strength training is more important while fasting to, again, help preserve muscle mass. Weight loss. This is something that you want to keep a very strong tab on. We haven't talked about weight loss whatsoever related to fasting, mind you. Weight loss could be a purpose of a fast as well. When we compress our feeding window, we literally have less time to eat. And when we have less time to eat, we usually don't eat as many calories as if the governor is off and we can eat whenever we want. Another mouse study actually showed that in mice that had a time-restricted feeding window of about 8 hours, when compared to those who were able to eat whenever they wanted, they had a lifespan of about 25% longer, and they weighed about 20% less. So they had better body composition, for lack of a better phrase, and they lived longer than those that just ate and ate and ate. Really emphasizes the point of a healthy body weight as well as fasting supporting long-term health. Performance. If you are somebody who is a high performer, exerciser, pickleball player, tennis player, golf player, fasting can have some negative repercussions with all of those because of the energy availability until you get used to it. Some people will actually perform better in a fasted state than in a fed state. What I would never recommend is if you have a very important match tomorrow, have tomorrow be the first day that you're going to try to fast. You got to test this out, see how your body is going to respond to it, because there are going to be some performance responses to it. We talked about gender differences. I'm sorry.
That makes no sense.
Men do have an easier time adapting to the change. Again, not me. Science tells us that. Women end up struggling a little bit more with adjusting to time-restricted feeding than men. And again, this is because women are more responsive to hormonal changes and the energy association to hormonal changes. So it's nothing that, we know that women are tougher than men. We know they're much more headstrong than us. So it's nothing in that regard. It's just because of all the other chemical processes that are taking place in a female body compared to a male body. One thing the majority of people find when they do try some fasting is that you recognize how much of your feeding is just mindless, of how much time you spend just going to the kitchen, opening the kitchen door, going to the cabinet, going through the sports club and taking a couple crank turns of nuts or M&Ms or goldfish, whatever it happens to be. We're just doing this autonomically because it's there. It's not because we actually need it. And that's something that even if you only do one fast, which I encourage everyone in this room to do, there are some huge takeaways on just self-awareness. Oh, practical recommendations. What is your current eating habit? Are you somebody who is a 2-meal-a-day person? Do you love your breakfast, lunch, dinner? That should really dictate what variation of fasting is going to be approachable for you, or what you might want to try as a starter. Slowly transforming or adapting into the change. If you're somebody who, again, bookends your day, you're eating dessert, and then right after you spring out of bed, you're having breakfast, we probably only want to inch that close a little bit on each side. Maybe we eliminate the dessert or push the dessert a little bit earlier, and then we shift breakfast about 30 minutes later. Then the next day, we shift a little, until we try to find ourselves into one of those recommended target windows. Don't go, you're gonna set yourself up for failure if you go from a normal eating habit pattern and say, all right, tomorrow for the next week, I'm gonna go into a 16 and 8. It's gonna be more challenging than it needs to be. And all of these other cellular processes are governed by your circadian clock, your circadian rhythm. We talked about this in our sleep lecture. It's regulated in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, part of your hypothalamus in your brain. There are certain things that are supposed to happen at certain times of the day. When you start shifting your eating pattern around, your circadian clock is going to adjust to that. So we want to shift that slowly, incrementally, so that we don't disrupt other parts of our life. Monitor your energy, your mood, your sleep and performance. So many of us have the watches that tell us what we're doing on every day. Our recovery, our Whoop strain, whatever happens to be. Use those numbers. We wear these pieces of technology for a reason. Ideally, not just to have a certain type of watch, but because we're learning from the technology. Couple considerations, those who should be cautious: pregnancy or breastfeeding, history of eating disorders. If you're somebody who has a history of either bulimia or anorexia, we know that when we start shifting your food eating patterns around, that can bring back old habits, something that I would pursue with a great deal of caution. Uncontrolled diabetes. Fasting is going to have a certain response on your blood insulin level. Be mindful. And underweight individuals. Again, if we're going to start compressing our feeding window to a certain window of time, we already went over how by compressing that feeding window, we might drop our daily calorie intake. If you're already underweight to begin with, it may drive you towards being more underweight. Again, track the scale, track your energy level. All of those things are going to be super, super helpful. Practical recommendations, key takeaways. Fasting is not about doing more, it's about doing less but strategically. So there's a time, there's a place, there's a purpose to these hours, types of fasting, and windows in which we are eating. And bottom line, it's about creating a window of time for your body to repair itself. It shouldn't be sought out as, I need to lose 15 pounds, so I want to start doing fasting. We're missing the point. Yes, that is going to be a sidebar benefit, but we're in this room because we want to live longer, we want to live healthier, we want to continue to enjoy playing pickleball, tennis, golf, fitness, walking with friends into our hundreds and beyond. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to for a very, very long time. And fasting is a lifestyle tool that can truly help support that. this is the fun part for me. What questions do you have?
Are there any studies that show the impact on your resting metabolic rate when you're fasting? So for example, if you're fasting, does your body effectively slow down and use fewer calories because it's, telling your body you gotta protect yourself because you're not bringing in food?
Yeah, so the question was, does fasting cause your resting metabolic rate or your energy usage to lower? Not necessarily, because ideally you're still doing your typical activities of daily living. You're still doing your normal exercise routine. So we're not breaking a pattern because we're fasting. We're just adding a layer on top of our day, if that makes sense. The body shouldn't be given a chance to really know that we're eating less, so we have to start shutting itself down. And that comes with proper preparation, both on the back end and the front end. Of leading up to it, we're providing ourselves with good, high quality foods. We're focusing on protein so that we carry some of that feeling of fullness over with us. And we can go down the rabbit hole of ketosis. Majority of us in this room probably are aware of a certain cellular process called ketosis, where the body starts really releasing ketones, which are then used to help support the lack of energy availability.
So a question I have is, partially fasting, I start to lose too much weight, so I sort of stop it even though it's 10. But then I do the proteins and I cut down on the carbs. And my issue is, how do I solve that performance tiredness issue? Is it just simply with more carbs, or is it adjusting the whole scenario?
How do I adjust my performance? I think it's great that you have the awareness that you recognize the performance issue and you're recognizing the weight loss. For me personally, if I were to see that happening to me, I would start increasing my carbohydrate amount the day or leading up to the start of the fast, so that my body does have more readily available energy for the strain that I'll be putting on it.
Can you do that 2 hours before the time of performance and have an impact?
It depends on the type of sugars ingested. Some quicker available carbohydrates or simpler carbohydrates. Bananas are always an easy recommendation. Your starch, your non-whole wheat varieties of carbohydrates are going to metabolize faster and have a quicker availability of energy. So yeah, avoid complex carbohydrates, go for simpler sugars.
So breaking the fast, so supplements, powders, creatine, the things that, collagen, things that I know I take. Can I take them during the fast, or do I have to adjust the timing?
Supplements that I can take during a fast, anything that has a calorie in it is a hard no.
Okay.
So collagen, if you have your scoop of collagen, that's probably about 40 calories. That's going to push you out of your fast. That's going to cause some level of blood insulin level spike. Creatine, no calories. As long as it's just mixed in water, tea, or coffee, you're good with that.
Okay.
And if it's anything in like a pill form, if you're taking a like metformin or to help with the evacuation of blood insulin, those things are all still okay.
And any medications?
Medications are still okay as well.
How about, I've always told, coffee, is it black coffee only?
Black coffee only.
And one more question, because I have friends that do this and they're hard fast on their times. It's like 2 o'clock to me. I mean, you can change times as long as it's the 16-hour window, correct?
That is a fantastic question. I'm glad somebody brought it up. Can I change times? Well, remember, we're governed by a circadian clock. So if we start shifting our time around, our body is going to start to think that it's also a slightly different time, depending on how much we shift. And it also, if we're shifting incrementally or a lot. So say, for example, we are hard set on doing an 18-hour fast and a 6-hour feed. When we shift that an hour one day and shift it again an hour the next day and shift it again an hour the next day, suddenly our feeding window is now 8 p.m. until midnight, 8 p.m. until 2 in the morning. Don't check my math. We've now created a situation where we have to figure out how to move it back in the other direction. So I do support trying to stay rather steadfast in the window. And once you're in the window, there has been research done on what will break the fast even inside of it. We know that a single peanut eaten inside of a fast is not going to be enough to break your fast. So if you have your small amount of collagen, it might not be enough to break your fast if you happen to have exercise prior to it, because we've gotten our heart rate up, we've used some of our stored glycogen, we've dropped our blood insulin level, so that's not enough to push us out of it. So there are a lot of small nuances. That was a long way of saying try to stick to that window as much as possible.
A couple years ago, we had a speaker here in the wellness lecture. I don't know if anyone came. It was about a fasting mimicking program called Prolon. And basically, you know, it's like a series of liquids and soups and nut bars that go through all the phases that you've mentioned. It's a 5-day program, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you know, there's a lot of scientific disclosure. So it was a medical doctor that came and talked about it. I don't know if anyone was here, but it was actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would say that anything that it sounds like it's too good to be true, and many things that sound like it's too good to be true often are. We know that and there's a difference between doing a fast and a cleanse, and that sounds like a little bit more like it could be some sort of a.
Yeah, it's not a cleanse. I mean, it's a, if you look, if you read
Proline.
it's called Prolon. You might want to look at it.
I will. I'll familiarize myself.
There were a number of people in the room, and I don't recognize anyone who was there, but I've done it twice, and I found it to be very beneficial, and I actually had blood tests before and after, and it worked very well for me. So I just mentioned
Yeah.
if anyone wants to look it up.
Yeah.
Robert, what she's talking about is actually the most studied in medicine fasting mimicking diet. Victor Longo, who
Yes,
developed it,
yes.
he is the pioneer in intermittent fasting, and it's highly regarded
Hmm.
and very effective, as you
Yeah,
suggested.
Walter
So
Longo,
definitely worth
yeah.
looking into.
Will do.
Not everyone can manage, you know, the non-fed state for that period of time, especially if people are on different medications. I think you mentioned metformin and insulin, including the GLP-1 inhibitors. So, you know, that's a very good alternative. So definitely worth looking into. And also, you probably weren't hungry on that, and some people get really hungry during the fasting situation. So that's a lot of human data.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, yeah, Walter, Walter Longo, Dr. Walter Longo.
Longo.
So anyway, you know, because we learned about it here at Mediterra, so that's why I wanted to mention it.
I'll take a look.
Thank you.
Overall levels of calories that we should be targeting. You're seeing all the longevity guys that are living so much longer, having very tiny amounts of calories every day, and you know.
Overall, how many calories should we be having? On most occasions, it's less than we actually are. I think the majority of us are probably eating more than we need. We overestimate the amount of energy that we expend on a given day. We have very, very good tasting food, and very good tasting food often has a lot of ways in which that calorie amount is being bumped up. If you're interested in learning exactly how many calories you should be taking in on a given day, I'll give a plug that next month we'll be bringing in some VO2 max testing, which measures your respiration rate under extreme considerations of exercise, so we know exactly how many calories you would need to eat in a day to maintain, to lose weight, to gain weight, and then also be able to provide some performance recommendations. There's other ways in which to learn. We can look at doing a DEXA scan. DEXA scans are very good at helping predict how many calories we should have during a given day. Uses X-ray to measure bone mineral density, fat-free mass versus fat mass, skeletal muscle mass, everything. You learn about your resting metabolic rate and then your basal metabolic rate as well. To give you a number, it's all over the board. It's too person to person to say 1,800 for men, 1,500 for women. But we do have tools that can help figure that out. All good?
I think we talked
No?
once about how you start your day.
Yeah.
Fast with a plain piece of chicken.
Yeah, that's something that we didn't really touch on, is how do you break your fast? My recommendation, simpler is always better. The longer duration that your fast is, the simpler that it should be. Always with easily digestible protein, carbohydrate, very small amount, if any, fat, because fat has the tendency to trigger more of a gut response. So for me personally, after I get out of my fast, chicken breast, super simple protein, easy to break down. Carbohydrate, usually either sweet potato or maybe something like a banana. Banana, simpler sugar. Sweet potato is more of a complex carbohydrate, so it does take longer to break down, but it's very easily digestible. I would avoid greens or roughage just because, again, the cellular bonds take a little bit more stress from the stomach to break down, so avoiding like broccoli or asparagus, those stringier green vegetables.
You just have that later.
Yeah,
Still want
yeah.
to take all green vegetables.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we want to break the fast and then give ourselves a little bit of time, and then we can incorporate some of the better tasting foods.
How much time, if you have a small piece of chicken, can I eat oatmeal like right after that?
Maybe an hour or two.
Oh, no.
Yeah, just let the stomach kind of wake itself up and then start introducing a little more.
Okay. And other than chicken, what else would be simple protein to start with?
Others,
Whatever.
a protein shake is a great way to do it, like a whey or a vegan protein shake, because it is in a liquid form already, and that's going to be easier to digest. Always a great recommendation. I wouldn't go with, like, pork is going to be easier to digest than red meat, again, because of the chaining of the proteins. Thinking about protein specifically, turkey would be another one. It digests very similarly to chicken. Fish to me just would not be appealing after a fast. But yeah, pork, chicken, turkey would all be great ones, but I do think that a shake is probably the most approachable.
What do you put in your protein shake?
What do I put in my protein shake? I keep it simple. My base is usually either milk of choice or milk that's available, almond or skim. I tolerate whey. Not everybody tolerates whey protein well. So if it's not whey protein, it's vegan protein. And then usually a banana. And that's it. Again.
You mean like pea protein or something?
Yeah, pea protein.
Healthy for you?
Jury is still out. It's what we have right now. There's all different sorts of vegan proteins coming into play. We're going to know a whole lot more in a few years on whether or not they're worth it. But I think your next question is going to be, do you put peanut butter in it? I don't put peanut butter in it, again, because it's introducing a fat, which I try to avoid introducing fat immediately after a fast.
What do you think of like the greens, like powders, and do they have any benefit, like flax seeds, chia seed, green, the powder for vegetable powders?
Yeah, I took AG1, or it was called Athletic Greens, for a very long time. Honestly, I just kind of fell out of habit with it, but I feel like my gut health was much better while on it. I do think that if we're cognizant enough of it and trying to eat a nice, healthful, rounded diet, all of those micronutrients for the most part can be captured. But if you're somebody who has difficulty or doesn't seek out fruits and vegetables, it can be a great tool. Similar to chia and flax, if you're not somebody who likes to eat a lot of fiber-rich food, or somebody who lacks some of the other micronutrients in their diet, those are good things to throw into a shake.
What did you say, AG1? What is it?
AG1. Literally the letter A, the letter G, 1.
Is that a company that?
Yeah. They've been around for maybe 10 to 12 years or so. Doesn't taste too bad. Still get a little bit too bad.
I had to stop taking it, it tastes horrible.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. Yeah.
Is that
I'd rather
protein
eat
too?
my
or
fruit.
No, it's just
Well,
fruit.
that's just during the day.
Yeah, that's just
So
your
it's not
fruits and
having- You would
vegetables.
still start with protein.
Yeah.
Then you would have that an hour later or something.
That was actually how I used to start my day, and I knew my day would get, my day would get better from there on out.
Can you add it to your protein shake?
You can. It has a lot of good stuff.
FYI, it's cheaper at Costco than it is buying it through their,
That's wild.
through their website.
Oh. I will stick around. I know we're getting the evil eye from our 2 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back next month.